Welcome to LOA Today. Walt Thiessen and life coach Tom Wells here. Today is Friday, February 23rd, 2018, 8 a.m. Eastern Time. Your first daily dose of happy for the day. And today we are going to be the light. We are going to talk about the idea that we are all part of the light, which is kind of it's not a completely new idea. Religions have explored it, and other spiritual modalities have explored it, but Tom's going to bring a particularly unique perspective on it because he's been interacting directly as part of the light, which is kind of cool. So, Tom, I'm glad we're going to be talking about that. How you doing?
Doing great. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. Had a really interesting win yesterday in that Louise and I made another friend.
That's great.
We met an LOA person who has been following the show for a number of months now and loves it. He's a local real estate agent, young guy named Dave. So I shouted out to him yesterday afternoon, but I'm shouting out again. Hey, Dave, how you doing? And Dave was he was enthusiastic about, for instance, the podcast you and I did on Tuesday, where you shared your channeled stuff that your channeled writing that you've done, your automatic writing. He was just as interested as we were about that. So that was good.
Yeah.
It's always fun to meet somebody who's been listening, and we're going to get to do it again on Sunday because you remember Lucy, who called in our first Tuesday night. We're going to meet Lucy on Sunday, so this is good. It's good stuff.
Wow. Yeah. It'd be cool to get everybody together who's been listening to be like a kindred spirit tribe.
There you go. Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah. I love to meet people who are interested in this kind of stuff because I don't just always meet those people. I mean, if I go to my Tai Chi class or my comedy improv class, or I go over to some friend's house or people in my family, none of them are really that. They're not listening, and I can hardly talk about law of attraction with a lot of the people in my life because it's not their thing,
Yep.
And unless it comes up, I don't push it on people at all.
Yeah, I use as my gauge the idea that if I can see them trying to prevent themselves from rolling their eyes, I probably shouldn't talk anymore about it.
Yeah, or if the first thing out of their mouth is, "Oh, really?"
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you think that? You think that?
Up, yes.
Well, what about Trump? Or whatever they say. It's like, well, but some people really are interested. They really are interested.
Oh, that's
it's fun.
That's funny. So, how about the topic for today? Well, I didn't ask you. What's your week been like? I mean, have you had anything really good happening? Anything fun?
Yeah, I mean, my comedy improv is really fun. It's so incredible to go do that and be completely spontaneous. I just love doing that. I went dancing. I mean, I try to go dancing every week I can. It's like half of freestyle conscious dancing where I'm in a room with 200 to 300 people and everybody's dancing, doing their own thing. But there's a lady on a microphone and she's leading everybody. It's what's called the 5 rhythms dance method, but it's very unstructured and it's fun. And it's just so good to go there and totally let go to the dance. And,
that's great.
And I don't know, I just felt really connected. People came up to me afterwards and there's just a lot of love, and
that's nice.
It's good to let go completely to spirit and then just see how life just opens up, same in comedy improv. You just go into scenes and just completely be spontaneous and all of a sudden there's just tons of laughter and tons of fun going on. And it's just nice to be doing things like that.
Oh, yeah. Back when I first started doing swing dancing about, let's see, how long ago was that? It was roughly 25, almost 30 years ago. Wow. Was it that long ago?
You're a swing dancer, huh?
Yeah. And when I first started doing that, it was amazing to me because that's one of the few activities I know of where people they get very warm toward each other, very friendly, non-alcoholic. I love that part. No alcohol because especially with something like dance, you know how it is. I mean, you can just, it's very aerobic. Alcohol would actually interfere with it, so nobody's ever drinking anything. So you actually get people in their normal, in their true mental and emotional state without being altered by some sort of chemical. It's great. I love that part.
Oh, yeah. No, it's good. Yeah, dancing to me is like, and they say that if there was a recent study that somebody pointed out to me on Facebook or something that said there is no better activity that you can do as you're getting older than dancing. You know,
really?
Dancing addresses every single part of your body, your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual. I mean, it uses all the muscles in your body. You're doing it all in all kinds of positions where it affects your balance. So, one of the main things that as people get older that affects their health is when they fall down, and to keep your balance really good as you grow older, dancing is one of the very best things you can do.
Wow.
But aerobically, just all that you're using all the joints, you're moving every part of your body. That's what I love about it. And
well, I can't say I'm surprised, but that's good to hear. I do need to get back into it because it's been a while since I've been dancing, and I've had a number of little excuses I made with like knee injuries and places that hurt and so forth. And I'm actually working on making things, taking steps both spiritually and physically to clear that up because I really do want to get back to it. So yeah, that's one of my stated goals. I'm now stating it to the public.
Awesome.
So being the light. What's the scoop here? Because that's not your typical LOA Today topic. Where did that come from?
Well, I decided that I wanted to give a try since I'm in this course on channeling. I wanted to try asking my allies in the unseen realm. Those who are connected to me. You call them your guides, your divine guidance, the sources that are connected to us that are in the unseen realm. And of course, as Abraham said, the greater part of us is an infinite being. The greater part of us is infinite and is, has no beginning, no end, and it'll go on forever. That's why you can't get it wrong when you're living here in this body, because you've got forever to play. And it's, that's the way Abraham describes it. And I like that. So I said, I'm going to ask for a topic, and I didn't know what was going to happen. So the word that came out, I'll read you what they said the first time I asked.
Okay.
This is a few paragraphs. It'll go on for a little bit here, but you might like it. They said, the topic we would like to suggest is light. What is it to be a being of light? And how does that inform and affect your experience here? Well, multidimensionality is a big word and a big concept, and a concept does you little good when contrasted with an experience. So let's look at it experientially, if that's possible. What's it feel like? Do you know? You think perhaps that you don't, and of course, in your more dense earthly body, the idea of being a being of light seems rather impossible to grasp. So we ask you, wouldn't it make sense that this is something you actually know even better than you know the body density stuff? Of course it would. It is the greater and even more real you. When we ask you to consider your light body, we're asking you to let go of your preoccupation with your physicality and feel into the realm of light. It is a memory that is more than a memory. For even at this moment, it's you. It's the true you. You are this spirit, you might say, first and foremost, and we encourage you to remember it and to feel it more. Like remembering the magic moments of your childhood. When your body was small, it wasn't as noticeable to you, perhaps, but your mind was always flying off somewhere in wild and fun ways or scary ways in your imagination. So be a bit open to that place of ease and trust, for your light body is of the flying nature. It's much more expansive, and it's vibrating in a more colorful way, you might say, than this more dense human body. So what your light body wants to tell you is that it travels in the dream time, and it's where you meet your spiritual allies for rendezvous. They are there in the dream time awaiting your arrival in their realm, and you have to want to be there enough with them for the energies to allow that. It's just vibration, but it's sort of childlike vibration of openness, innocence, and trust. You know this place well. It feels really familiar and really good to you. And then they're speaking to me here about the teacher I had from India for 40 years. It says, it's like that knowing you had with your teacher from India when you just knew, you just felt and surrendered to how fully enveloped in love and trust you felt. And you could rest there and you could feel so satisfied, so contented, so peaceful, so knowing, so happy, so free and so good. We invite you to open that inner door once again and allow yourself that freedom and that trust and that ease of being held in the embrace, in the world of total protection and total safety and total security. This is the realm of life, of light. This is where you belong, and it's what home feels like. Now it's time for you to gift yourself with this homecoming right here and right now without having to leave your body. This is a permission you give yourself to feel your essence, to travel in the realm of light. Find that feeling more now. Feel for it and be receptive of it. You have already asked for it because it's the real you, and your imagined separation from it is what's pulling you so strongly back home to it. You can never really leave your realm of light, but you have done a lot of forgetting, and now it's time to remember once again. We think you'll like this experience a lot. So that's the first thing I channeled on it. That's what came out.
The theme of being separated without really being separated. We hear that one a lot from a lot of different sources.
I mean, Abraham talks about it constantly. You know, what is it to align with your higher source self? What is alignment? You know, what is it when you wake up in the morning and you've been in that state all night long? Hopefully, you've been in that state all night long of being connected to some other realm. You know, where dreams occur, where you get this total rest. You go into these different, you know, the delta state, according to, you know, brain science. The brain goes into this place where they don't know what the brain's doing at that time, but Abraham says we're connecting to our source self, to your infinite self. So it's not that far away from us. We go there in meditation. If you get to the place in meditation where your mind calms down enough and your thoughts get still enough, you're actually entering more into the place of who you really are.
It's interesting, too, because Abraham also talks about the idea that when we're asleep, we aren't doing any attracting. There's no law of attraction effect going on, which is interesting. I mean, that on the one hand, like you say, we're connected. On the other hand, we're not attracting anything. That's an interesting juxtaposition right there. I'm not quite sure how to figure out what that all adds up to, but it's interesting.
Yeah, it's like complete allowing, isn't it? It's sort of like we're just in the receptive mode, and yet that really is what attracting is. It's so in a way our natural state is resourced. I guess that's what it comes down to me. You know, sometimes when I talk to clients, I get into this conversation with them is that you're not letting yourself be resourced enough by who you really are. You're struggling too hard in this realm of push and pull world, you know, to think that it's on your shoulders to make so many things happen for yourself when really your infinite self has already got it nailed. You know, it's like that's why the word security and trust and safety are so interesting, because are we really that safe? Are we really so taken care of? You know, can we really relax that much? Don't we got to watch our back? I mean, isn't this a dangerous place?
Well, I would have thought it to be a dangerous place. I just think to me, it's more interesting that they're so concerned with safety. And I suppose people are concerned with safety a lot. I find myself a lot less concerned with safety than ever before. So it's not a big thing to me. That's why when I hear, you know, secure and safe, I think, well, okay, well, that's an interesting thing to say. I wonder why they said that. It just, it isn't part of my consciousness. It just isn't part of my consciousness. I guess as I think about it, yeah, it probably is part of a lot of people's consciousness. Certainly true for women. Women are often, or are nearly always, to some degree, concerned with that. So that would be very resonant for them. And even many men, I would think, yeah, I guess it makes sense, you know, especially what kind of living conditions you're in. If you're in an urban area, perhaps that might make you more safety conscious, more secure conscious. I'm just saying, for me, it's different.
I'm sorry. For me, it isn't just my bodily safety. In fact, I hardly think about that. Although but if you take it to the extreme, it's like it's the safety of having enough money. It's the security of knowing that you're going to have the right relationships. It's the security of knowing that you're going to have the things you want in your life, and you're not going to end up on the street. You know, I guess I found in my life I had that when I took it far enough of always questioning, well, what's the fear behind that fear, and what's the fear behind that fear, and as I would break it down, I'd find, well, the ultimate thing I'm afraid of is that I could completely lose it and end up in a mental ward, or I could end up on the street, you know, like a bag man, you know, a guy pushing a shopping cart, you know, down the sidewalk and sleeping on cardboard, you know. That safety and security is like this bottom line of knowing that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's huge for me.
Okay.
I mean, it's been huge for me. If I'm really honest with myself, that's the thing that I want more than anything else, is to know that I'm going to be taken care of no matter what.
Okay. I know that I have been through times within the last few years where I got really concerned about whether we might actually be homeless, whether we might actually be unable to, you know, even cover the minimum stuff. And having come through on the other side of that, I did so mainly through my study of LOA and the spiritual side of it. And so now I guess I just don't have that concern anymore. I mean, it's not like all of our financial problems have been resolved. They haven't, but they're improving. And I just don't even think about that anymore. So it's interesting to hear you say that. I understand what you're saying. It's just I guess I have improved enough that isn't even part of my consciousness anymore.
Well, is it possible that you've embraced somehow, by listening to Abraham and understanding this law of attraction, you somehow embrace the idea that everything is okay? Is that true?
I think that's probably true, yeah. Again, not anything I've ever given any conscious thought to, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, how did you arrive at the place where you're no longer stressed? You know, a lot of people are, I think they're, if they look at what drives them to do a job they don't like, what drives them to, you know, be in relationships where they feel obligated to the relationship. I mean, lots of things we do is we hang on to certain things because of fear, I think.
Yeah,
at least
true.
I have.
That's true. And you're right. I mean, I have managed to eliminate almost all of the stresses. Not all of them yet, but boy, it's a really rare thing for me to be stressing about something. Most of the time, I'm just feeling good.
Wow.
And I'm
really
saying to myself, you know, as I'm saying that, I'm thinking, you know, maybe I've come farther than I thought I had. Maybe I've actually made more progress than I realized. Because you're right. I mean, there have been times in my life where stress was everything, where the fears were everything, and I'm just not there now. This is cool. I'm glad you brought this up. I'm really glad you mentioned this. Like, I hadn't realized that I was this far along. This is good. So thank you.
Yeah. And that's one way of saying what it means to be the light. You know, like I was thinking back to the 10 years I did spend with this teacher from India, where I was exclusively living in the ashram, you know, these spiritual shelters that were in all these major cities in the United States. They were just, you know, places of residence, but they were places where you meditated in the morning, you meditated at night, we lived a vegetarian diet. I didn't have any of my own possessions except my clothing, and it was sort of a monastic lifestyle. But that feeling of being completely sheltered was a wonderful feeling. You know, it was like I was the director, so I didn't have to go out and work. My job was to be like the parish priest or something. You know, like I was the coach and the counselor to those who came to me. But, you know, and I put on programs at night with live speakers and music, but it was the 10 most wonderful years of my life in a way, because I just felt so safe and so secure and so much like I didn't have a care in the world. And I wasn't struggling against, you know, the odds that so many people struggle against in the world.
How long ago was it that you did that?
It was age 23 to 33, so It was a long time ago.
Yeah, a long time ago, back in the mists of time.
Yeah, but it was the prime of my life. It was a funny time to be celibate. That was the weird part about it.
Yeah, that's true.
I had to be celibate because I was one of the directors. Other people that were into this particular experience weren't celibate, but
Okay.
I had to be. But and anyone who lived in the ashram was celibate. But eventually all the ashrams were ended because the teacher from India felt like it was just didn't work in the Western world. It was an Indian concept, and he said, "This isn't working over here."
Okay. Well, hey, I give him credit for being honest about it, being realistic.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
good.
exactly.
So
being a
yeah, get
go
back
ahead.
to it. No, I was just going to get back to it the way you were. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say being in the light. It's sort of just like asking us to be more lighthearted. Also, just be more lighthearted about everything in our life. Like it's to turn away from the things that feel like so much struggle and that feel like so much pain. How can we turn just towards embracing this idea that who we really are is infinite and everything is really okay. And in the midst of our darkest hour, if we remember that, it could be really helpful to just accept the fact that everything is really somehow not as serious and not as prone to feelings of difficulty as we tend to infuse it with. We're the ones that make our lives difficult, and it's, of course, when we're struggling and suffering, it's hard to hear that. We don't want to. Doesn't feel like it's just easy to drop the things that we're struggling with.
Oh no.
But it's been very helpful to me to accept the fact that I am a being of light. I go there every night when I sleep. It's where I try to go to when I meditate. It's really there all day long, even though mind will tell me that other things are problems or that other things are on my plate, but
Now let me ask you something, because the themes that tend to come up about the spiritual side all have a continuity to them. So, for instance, Abraham will tell us that when we are in physical, we are also in non-physical. We're connected to the non-physical, and we have like this constant cheering section from the non-physical. Focus their attention on us at all time. Total love, total belief, total support, continuous. You also get similar kinds of concepts from excuse me, from other spiritual disciplines, from religions. Many teachers of this kind have proposed the idea of this continuous flow, this continuous connection. And one thing that I have noticed in my own attempts to, I don't want to say reconnect, because I don't think we ever lost connection, to re-notice the connection, is that I often have trouble noticing it. In fact, there have been many times where I thought I had no connection at all because I just couldn't detect any of it. I couldn't notice anything.
mm-hmm.
And then Abraham comes along and says, well, your emotions are messages between yourself and your inner self. And
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay. So, all right, well, there's a form of connection I've had all along, because I've certainly had emotions all along. And
Mm-hmm.
then Wendy, for instance, and others, you, Wendy, Cindy, many telling me, well, the impulses that we get, the little ideas that seem to come out of nowhere, that are kind of those little quiet ideas, if we react to them or respond to them with a conscious intention, then we are in effect communicating with our inner being that way. Like, oh, okay. Well, why didn't I notice that before? And I think I know why.
Mm-hmm.
I call it the black cat against the black wolf syndrome. Like, we have two black cats. I have one of them in my lap right now. So I'm engaging
Mm-hmm.
in petting my cat, which is, of course, is a wonderful thing to do. Feels good. But if my cats are outside and it's night and I don't have a light and I don't have a flashlight, I can't see them. I mean,
Yeah.
the black cat against the black sky or black ground, forget it. I mean, you just can't see them. You can look all you want, you just don't see them. The most you can hope for, and this is what I often do, is kind of just hold my focus on where the area where I think they are, and just look for motion. Because if I see motion, there's probably a cat there. That's the only way I can tell, right?
Yeah, or you see the eyes. Yeah.
So if they look at you and you're shining a light, then yeah, you'll see the eyes. But very often you can't even see the eyes of these guys. I mean,
Mm.
because you know how a cat, when they're outside, their eyes get dilated because they're so excited. Well, a dilated eye, that's black too. It's all black.
Mm. Wow.
So,
Yeah.
it's pretty wild. I equate that to some of these inner signals that we get. If the inner signals are continuously there, just like that black cat against the black knight is continuously black, it becomes hard to notice it. We live in a world of contrast, and I think we're built for contrast. We're built for noticing it. That's the way our senses are put together. That's the way our consciousness is put together. We notice contrast. If we don't have contrast, it's hard for us to see it.
Yeah.
And I think that's what really happens in terms of, I don't think we lose connection. I think we just can't, we lose sight of it. We just, because it's continuous, because it never stops, it's like it's always there. So we've stopped noticing it because it's no longer contrasting.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder
So
what you
we've
thought
stopped.
about that.
We've stopped noticing what the inner peace or the
messages,
fact
the stuff that the stuff of the communication with the inner being.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't recognize it, if we don't notice that it's there, it can be there, and we just, because of the lack of contrast, we just don't see it. It's like the old saying, it's right in front of your nose. My wife will often, she'll be walking around the house with the glasses propped on top of her head because she didn't want to use the glasses at the moment. And then she'll look at me and she'll say, "Where are my glasses?" I mean, they were there all along, but there was no difference. It didn't feel different. She couldn't see them for sure, right? So she didn't know they were there. She'd forgotten,
That's funny.
But
yeah, go ahead.
It illustrates it. It makes me wonder, what do you think? I mean, do you think that this whole thing about contrast is important in terms of understanding whether or not we're able to easily connect to a continuous source, or do you think I'm just kind of on a crazy, unrelated path?
You mean to think that there needs to be contrast for us?
Not that if there is contrast, that makes it easier. I'm just suggesting that the lack of contrast in something that is continuous, by its very nature, if it's continuous, then there's not a whole lot of contrast because it's like a light switch that's always on. It's not like the light switch keeps turning on and off, on and off. It's just always on. So if it's always on, does that make it harder for us to notice it?
I'm having a hard time following how you're seeing that in terms of your own experience. Like what do you not notice? You mean not noticing that life's working out, or?
No. I'm talking about the actual signals I get from my inner being. The things like the insights and so forth. Very often, I'm realizing I miss a lot of them.
Oh, why you're not getting the impulses? Why you might not be noticing what your inner being's saying to you?
Exactly. I mean, maybe I am getting the impulses. I just didn't see it, or I didn't feel it, I didn't hear it, I didn't notice it.
Well, I mean, Abraham says we're getting the impulses constantly.
Right.
And I know my channeling class is all about, they're saying that this other realm is constantly communicating with us, and it's communicating wisdom, it's communicating understanding, it's communicating, insight that's really can be really wonderful. As, why do we listen to Abraham? It's like, well, because it seems to be an awfully lot of wisdom there and wonderful insight into how life might actually work, that things can really work out wonderfully. And I think my whole life is just about getting myself more and more back to the place that I remember that everything's okay, and it's always been okay, and it's always going to be okay. And that contrast is more for the realm of playing and having fun than it is serious, intense responsibility. I noticed that in some of the things that Abraham talks about the light, they talk about how we just get way into this idea that we're on the earth in order to be responsible for other people's suffering, other people's darkness, or our own darkness, our own suffering. And we forget the fact that we're here largely to have a good time and to play and to enjoy this adventure. And so, yeah, I think our inner being is constantly helping us see, it's giving us impulses as to where's the creativity, where's the fun, where's the playfulness. Just like a little kid, like we've talked about that practically every podcast, how much kids are able to have such a good time, and then it gets programmed out of us as we get older and older through the school and all the conditioning of our society. We forget that we are actually here to have a really good time and to be very playful and very happy and dance and sing and be in love with other people and be in love with the food and be in love with the ocean, be in love with the sky and the trees and the animals and our cats. And, it's like, there's a lot of reasons to be super, super happy, but we've tend to think that, no, you can't really be that way and be living in this world, that, we get into this thing of we got to please others, and there's certain things that require bondage, and we have to be responsible, and therefore we have to experience bondage.
Isn't it interesting too how we have to be responsible, but having to be responsible never seems to be about having to be responsible for having a good time.
Yeah,
feeling good.
That's the big change joy. I think we're going through as a society.
We're supposed to be responsible, like you say, for all the bad stuff, for all the dark stuff. But we're not responsible for any of the light stuff? That doesn't make sense.
That's right. And Abraham was saying, what do you think that Jesus meant when Jesus said to turn the other cheek? And he said he meant look towards the light. Don't push against the darkness. He said Jesus is part of that light that shines, and when you feel it, you know it. And all these great teachers that have come before at the beginnings of all the religions, they all have access to us, and they're all part of this family of teachers. And those teachers aren't dividing off into segments saying, this is our religion, this is our religion, this is our religion. Rather, they're all standing there in the light, allowing anyone who wants to come near it to be part of it. So, it says there really aren't dark forces opposing the light. You're basically, the only people that are afraid of dark forces are those that are standing in the dark, and they're not looking at the light, and they're not experiencing the light. But it's like they say, when you go into a dark room, you go into a light room, there's no dark switch you can throw.
The dark switch, right?
you can turn the light off, and the room will fill with darkness. But I guess the point is that the real thing is the light. The light is really who we are. It's our true nature. And it does translate into being more light about our lives, being more happy to be alive, being more free, being more resourced by the fact that that's who we really are.
I remember about a week ago, Wendy and I had a conversation about responsibility because it became evident to both of us we had a different definition, and we finally figured out what the difference was. The definition she had was the one I would say would be the more popular definition, the one that most people have, whereas the one that I had was more of the dictionary definition. The popular definition of responsible is that responsible are, or actually wasn't even responsible, it was consequences. Consequences are negative. Consequences are like the punishment for what you do wrong. And if you look at what consequences actually means, consequence means that which comes next. It has nothing to do with right or wrong. It's just what comes next. So a consequence can also be a good thing. And that was part of my definition. When we realized there was a big difference in our definitions, we realized, there's something about the way we, in a sense, misuse words as people. We tend to take words that are perfectly good words and we turn them into negatives. So we turn responsible into a negative. I mean, when do we use the word responsible? 9 times out of 10, we use the word responsible when we did something wrong. I'm responsible for that. When in fact, responsible means able to respond.
Yeah.
That's really what responsible is. So if you're able to respond, then you are responsible. Well, you don't have to be able to respond solely to stuff you screw up. There's a lot more things you do that you're involved with, or that you're facing, or you're dealing with, or whatever, that can be good things that you are able to respond to, and therefore you are responsible.
Yeah. Well, and you can be responsible to being a lighthearted human being.
Yeah.
You can be responsible for being aligned with your higher source self, with clarity, with trust, with knowing, with happiness. That's a responsibility that I'm trying to own more than anything else.
Exactly.
To me, it's responsible to myself to go out and have fun and dance. It's responsible to me to go play.
And the consequences of focusing on what you love, and focusing on feeding your soul, and on focusing on loving yourself and so forth, the consequences of that are that you are a happy person. And that is not a misuse of the word consequences, just as you wanting to go dancing is not a misuse of the word responsible. They are actually proper uses of those words. So why don't we start using the words properly, in the whole meaning of them, not just that one little corner where there's a negative connotation with it. Because if we change the way we use the words, we're also going to change the way we think about the words. And if we change the way we think about the words, guess what's going to happen? We're going to be happier. We're going to lead better lives.
Yeah, to me, it's like shining the light into everything means lightening up. And so taking this attitude of intense seriousness out of things. I think that's one of the biggest things that we could all benefit by as a human race, is could we somehow find ways to lighten up about everything? How can we be just less intense about things? It's one thing to be serious and be responsible, it's serious to run a red light. It's serious to not steal from the local store or from your friend. It's serious to not mess with your neighbor's wife. It's serious to not hurt somebody. And it's serious when somebody gets seriously hurt, and we have to be attentive to what's going on, so that we can save their life and all that kind of stuff. But we could take the intensity out of it. I notice with a lot of millennials, my own kids being a good example, that something I love about when I hang out with people in their 20s and early 30s is that a lot of them, they really have a light attitude about things that my generation doesn't have as much. They laugh a lot more readily at things that I'm not always laughing at. And I love that. They're laughing from a place of lightheartedness. They just don't see it as a big deal. And maybe they've watched so many funny movies. There's so many, things out there that have said, let's not make things so friggin' serious. Let's have more fun.
Oh yeah. In fact, well, also to the credit of the boomer generation, the boomers came up with the phrase "lighten up."
Yeah.
Well, lighten up. That means be the light, right? That's basically the same thing.
Same thing. Yeah. It's like I've said, I've got a couple signs around my condo that say nothing serious is going on here. And when I come across one of those, it's just sometimes I'm in such a not lighthearted place. I'm in a more I'm like you. I don't get at all as intense as I used to get about anything. I mean, once I started listening to Abraham Hicks and realized all these things they're saying, I started realizing that, everything lightened up in my life. I mean, everything is now about going towards the light, going towards more lightheartedness, more chilling out, less seriousness, less struggle, less all that stuff. So,
very much so.
I thought I could read the second thing I channeled. It's not as long as the first one, but I channeled on the second day on this topic, and this is what came out the second. It says, "Today we wish to tell you to relax and not take this exploration of the light as a hard assignment that causes you to struggle. No, rather, it's the opposite. This topic is to remind you and others of how light and easy life can be, and truly is, when we relax and be at peace within. Think of a time when you didn't have a care in the world. Perhaps you were on a vacation, or you otherwise felt so secure, so happy to be just alive. that you gave yourself permission to just be completely fulfilled and completely at peace, as you can often be in meditation or in deep sleep. So what is this place, this state of being? Why, it's nothing but you, pure and simple, just the you that you are often otherwise striving to be, that you hope to be someday when you get everything else right, when you have all the things you want and need, so that you can finally say to yourself, okay, I've arrived, I'm here. I finally have all the ingredients in place for the life I can totally let go to. I have no more angst because I'm missing something. Now I can just relax and fully enjoy myself. So that place is actually every second. It's every moment. We just want you to know that. It's your choice and your decision every moment, whether you want to open up and just feel and just decide that all is well, all is well, all is well. Let go of all is well, always or often being in a future time or a future state of being that you're hoping to one day achieve. It's only a choice away in this moment. You are always light. You're always full, rich, and resourced.
Very nice. Yeah, that's good.
So
you're getting good at this.
Everything we've been saying.
You're getting very good at this, I have to say. Well, you are.
I love it. I love it because I'm just right automatically. I don't even think about any of that. It's just like I just write it and then I read it and I go, oh, that's cool. I like that.
So you're not even consciously aware of what you're putting down on the paper when you're doing it.
I'm conscious, because I can hear what I'm saying. I can see what I'm saying, but I'm doing it really, really fast. And I think that's the thing where I'm not stopping and using my head to think about it. I'm just saying what comes to me, and I like that what comes to me is that. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. As opposed to something confusing or something that's not as uplifting for me. It's uplifting for me to go back and read it. And I like that. That's why I'm willing to read it on the podcast. And
well, it certainly makes a lot more sense to me than watching out on a limb with a bunch of people who are twitching and shifting around and electric shocks going through their bodies as they're trying to channel things. You're just sitting there just writing stuff out. That makes a whole lot more sense to me. It's a lot less dramatic, perhaps, but it makes a whole lot more sense.
Yeah, in the channeling class, that's what the teacher says is that's what channeling really is. It's, all of us can do it, and we can do it whenever we want. And it's just a matter of getting into that relaxed place where you just let what's really true for us come through. And we do ask. I do ask for the guides that are in the unseen realm to speak through me. I ask for my infinite self to speak through me. But that's how we want to live our lives. Who wouldn't want to live their lives feeling that they're letting their higher self come through all the time? That.
Well, a lot of people actually. Strictly
well,
speaking.
Yeah, a lot of people
speaking.
Don't even have an interest.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. So clearly they do want to live their lives without it. They may actually reach a point where they decide that that's not necessarily such a good idea, but, they're on their own journey. They're doing their own thing. They are following their own path, their own guidance, their own wisdom, their own whatever it is. And
that's true.
In many cases, it's probably outside of themselves, but for the moment, that works,
Mm-hmm.
That's part of
some come across it accidentally, and then it's like it feels good to them, and some don't come across it because they don't want it. They're not looking for it.
Yep. That's where
they're happy. They're happy with the situation they're in.
That's where I really appreciate what Jerry Hicks wrote at the beginning of each broadcast they did, every book that they did, every article they wrote. It was something to the effect of, this material is being offered for those who are ready to receive it. And I always thought that was the ultimate in respect to write that and to say that. Because what it really said is, we're not going to shove anyone down anyone's throat. We're not going to judge anyone who doesn't agree with us. If this is something that you're looking for, we're offering it to you. If it's not something you're looking for, then we wish you well on your continuing journey through life. Mm-hmm. That's the ultimate respectful way to do it, I think.
Yeah, I love that. I love the fact that I'm learning more and more that there's no agenda to change anybody. Right. That I'm not being a life coach because I have a mission to change people. I might feel like I sort of have a mission to uplift, but I'm not. It's not my agenda. It's not like I'm, for so much of my life, I thought I had to find my life's purpose. And because I came here to the earth on a mission to help other people, or to help the planet, or to help animals, or to help something, and Abraham just says so many times over and over again, you're not here to fix anything. Nothing's broken. You're not broken. Nobody is broken. The planet's not broken. And that's a hard one to grasp when you look around and go, well, what about all these problems? Isn't it my job to be part of helping fix everything? And that's a whole show in itself that we should probably do, just like, why is it that there's nothing that's broken? How can you say that? And
it's a tough
it's
concept.
because in the realm of light, everything is always okay, and we're all made of that resourced infinite material, consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a tough concept. It's a concept that I know that those of us who, or at least like I am, who when we approach this topic for whatever reason we have, usually it's because something isn't working out the way we want it to. Usually it's because we want our lives to be different. We want a different financial experience or health experience or relationship experience or just getting certain things into our lives that we can't seem to get into our lives. Any kind of experience. If it isn't working out the way we're really hoping it will, and we're actually finding ourselves going in the opposite direction, that's how we end up looking at things like law of attraction. Well, in the process of doing that, we also want to bring other people in, which is okay. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, it's normal to want to uplift.
Yeah.
I think that's just who we are as beings of light, as human beings. We naturally want to uplift, and we want to share joy with other people.
It's one of the reasons we do the podcast. I mean, I'm not trying to convert anybody, but for those who want to find this stuff, I'm trying to help get this into the hands of more and more people. I mean, quite honestly, one of my motivations is I know what it's like to be so financially, beaten down that the idea of even buying a book is stressful because I can't afford a book, that kind of a feeling. So I wanted, my biggest goal with the podcast is to get information about this kind of stuff into the hands of people for nothing. Just doesn't cost them anything. And I also know that there is a little bit of a risk involved in that because when you don't have to pay for something, the tendency is to not take it as seriously. But I'm willing to risk that. That to me is a good risk because when you're in that bad place, you just need help. You just need help. You just need you need to get some idea of how to climb out. And so I'm hoping that this information that we put out every day gets into those people's hands in the way they need to have it. Not that we're going to fix them. Well, that's the last thing I want to do is try to fix somebody. But rather that we're going to provide the information so that they can realign themselves. They can fix themselves in a sense. Not that we're really broken, just more like, resolving the way we look at this stuff so that we can get to the place we want to be. It's not really fixing. It's just realigning, really.
It's all realigning. That's why I like the word that Abraham calls upliftment. They said we're all, and they say we're all teachers to our core, at least the people they're talking to on the Abraham Hicks, when they talk to people who are in the chair, they're always saying, you're a teacher to the core, you're an uplifter. And I think it's because there's part of all of us as a being of light that it's our normal state to simply uplift. We walk into somebody's house for dinner. And the Native Americans had this great thing. They called it the burden basket. And when a woman would go out to gather the firewood, the grandmother and the mothers used to go and gather the firewood, and they would take this burden basket, and it was a small basket that they could get all these little pieces of wood so they could have the small sticks that they would use to cook their food inside the teepee or inside the longhouse, whatever type of structure they had. And it wouldn't make much smoke, because you'd have a small fire. So they would go fill it full of these little pieces of wood. They would take the wood back to their dwelling. They would unload the wood, and then outside the door they would hang the burden basket. And it was called a burden basket because when their friends came over or other family members came over, they would see that basket. It remind them that before you go into your friend or your neighbor or your family's house, leave all your burdens at the door. Leave them in the burden basket and go in, and don't bring to their house your struggle and your suffering that you're going to lay on them.
Right.
And I always thought that is so cool.
It is.
You know, I literally had to practice that with my friends who I go have dinner with about once every 2 weeks or so, because I used to bring my worries into their house about my divorce and about the environment, you know, the global climate change and all these things I would talk about when I came to their house. And once I read that thing about Burden Basket, I said, I'm going to be kind to them and not bring into their house my conversations about things that I'm worried about. Instead, I'm going to see if when I'm with them, I can just enjoy their company and be a loving, kind, happy person, you know?
Yeah,
and so that's lightening up, you know?
It is lightening up. There's a thing that goes on in our culture that in part, I think, was inspired by therapists, which is the need to unburden ourselves, the need to get stuff out. And I think there's an unfortunate tendency that has come along with that message, that there are people who think that their friends are for unburdening themselves. I need to dump this on you so I can get it out. And I've known people like that. There are people like that where I've cut them off from my life because I just didn't want to constantly get dumped on. That's a concept that needs to change, and I think it is starting to change. Fortunately, that's the good news. But we need to get away from this idea of, okay, we need to get stuff out, but don't dump it on your friends. I mean, you need to learn how to release. That's what you really need. It isn't. There are some people who the only way they know how to release is by dumping it on somebody else. And that's not truly releasing. That's just dumping on somebody else. In fact, you can tell the people who do that routinely, they never actually release anything. What they get is a temporary relief out of it, but it doesn't they don't actually let go of it. You know, they just they reduce the charge of it until the next time they need to dump it on you. It's really a rather sick cycle that they get into. So I just wanted to take a moment to say, you know, if you know yourself to be somebody who relies on friends to basically get your problems out to them and, you know, pour out your heart and soul about all the things going on that you don't like in your life, you might want to rethink that one, because on the one hand, you're not doing your friends any favors. You're actually asking them to suffer along with you. And on the other hand, you're also not doing yourself any favor. Because if all you do is just put out there, all these terrible things are going on in my life, what you're really doing is you're not letting go of it. Otherwise, you wouldn't keep doing it, right? If it really did work, if dumping on your friends actually did work, you'd only have to do it once, right? Because you would have released it. The fact that we keep going back over and over again saying, well, all this stuff's going wrong, and then we go back later, all this stuff is going wrong, then we go back later, all this stuff is going wrong, proves that we never release it. It's never getting released. So this whole activity of, you know, letting it out on your friends like that because you need to let it out is actually not working.
No. We have a thing in coaching where we say a person can tell their sad story, their troubled story, their difficult life story, a maximum of 3 times in sessions. And then you got to cut them off and say, okay, now we're not going to go into your story anymore. You know, it's not helping you. And, you know, because by the 3rd time, you know, hopefully they're beginning to see but through your coaching that, you know, repeating your dilemma is only reinforcing it, like you just said.
Yeah.
And it's only telling the universe that you want more of the same. And therefore you're vibrating with what you don't want. And there's this thing in our society that it's almost like people believe that if they tell the sad story over and over again, that somehow it's going to get better.
Yeah, right.
And I mean, that's almost like, you know, why would I want to keep telling, you know, it's like CNN flashing the massacre in front of our eyes again and again and again and again and again and again and again. As if that's a responsible thing to do.
It's just like
but it actually thing, right? is just
the 12-step definition of what insanity is repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yeah.
the same thing.
Well, especially when it's a negative thing that feels bad. If things feel bad and we keep repeating them, we're going to keep feeling bad. And we've got to find a way to, look at what feels bad. Fine. Admit to the fear I have, admit to the great sadness and grief I'm feeling, admit to the anger that I feel, and then feel it, and then use it as an emotional guidance indicator to turn me back towards, well, what would I rather feel instead of this? What's a choice I'd rather be making than this? Now that I've felt this thing, I know it's deep in my guts. I felt it. And sometimes you just got to go through the feeling. It's not something to solve with immediately pivoting towards a better feeling. Sometimes you got to stay with it until it plays itself out. But, as Gay and Katie Hendricks said, the people I learned one form of coaching from, conscious living, they say there's practically no emotion that they've ever experienced with their 20,000 clients they dealt with that lasts more than about 15 minutes. Mm-hmm. So if you go into the depth of a feeling of anger or sadness or grief, it'll often pass in 15 minutes or so. I mean, depending on the feeling, but then you can then say, okay, what would I rather feel instead of this? Then begin to make that choice for your alignment with your source self, with your self that is connected to the light, that lives in the light, that knows who you really are, that knows that death doesn't even exist, because all these things we're so afraid of, they're not the big monsters that we think they are. That's the thing. They really
aren't. That's true. The other part of it too, and this is, I think, one of the reasons why people get into that place where they want to keep dumping on people and where they don't really want to go through, shifting the emotional set point and focusing on the good stuff, focusing on the stuff we want rather than the bad stuff. And that is our relative inability to release resistance. We find that, I think everybody who explores law of attraction, or most everybody, I won't say everybody because I have known people who release resistance very easily, but most people have a hard time releasing resistance, I've found. And I think that's just merely a skill we haven't developed very much. But I say to myself, wow, what happens the more that we learn to relieve and to release our own resistance without relying on dumping on somebody else to do it? What happens when we learn to actually be responsible for the consequences of the benefits of releasing and relieving ourselves of all the resistance? Part of it is just noticing what the resistance is. That's like step one. You have to notice that you have resistance. That can be a big thing right there. And then like step two, once you have acknowledged what it is, then it's okay. Well, how do I release it? I mean, I remember the first time I ran into the idea, I said, where's the off switch? How do I turn this resistance off? I'd look on my chest, there's no off switch. Where's the off switch? It can take you a little while to find that off switch. But that's where this exploration of who we are as beings of light, as connected to our inner being, in alignment, that's where that exploration really becomes valuable, because that becomes the tool that we use, or the tools that we use to release resistance, just by staying in that space as much as we can. That's where I find I'm able to most often find where I am resisting and then begin to find ways to release it. We are down to a minute and a half, so I'm afraid we're going to have to draw it to a close. This has been a really great topic. I do want to remind people, subscribe and share. The instructions on how to subscribe to the podcast are on the website, right on the homepage, loatoday.net. Just go there with your smartphone or your computer and follow the steps. We've pretty much made it as easy as it can be. And then share. There are all kinds of social media icons, so share it with your friends, because we want to spread the word. People who listen continuously. David, who we met just yesterday, said he listens to all the podcasts. And that's becoming more and more true. We're finding that. We're seeing it in the numbers. People are actually listening. So, subscribe and share. And remember, too, to check out Tom and I Tuesday night. Give us a call, because that's what we set up Tuesday night for, to take phone calls. Not phone calls. Well, phone calls, yes, but also calls through the Zoom system. It doesn't matter where you are. You don't have to use up your minutes. Just connect in via the internet and use the Zoom system to connect to us on the conference. And Tom, for somebody who needs a little more personalized off-the-air care, how can they reach you?
They can reach me on my website, which is youarejoy.com. And that's the word you, Y-O-U, AREJOY.com. And there's a page on there where they can sign up for a free coaching session with me for an hour. And then after that, you can decide if you want to do more or not. So just a way to have a free coaching session and then decide after that.
Sounds great. Tom, it's been a pleasure. Let's do it again Monday.
Thank you, Walt. It's really been great.
All right. We'll see you all later as well here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.